Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Discussions. My oh my, has it been a great week since my return. Coming back this Monday, we had not one, not two, but three great videos on Monday. One podcast episode, two shorts, all three of which did fantastic. You guys have been absolutely amazing. And on top of that, yesterday's video doing very, very well, yesterday's podcast episode. So thank you all for tuning into those. Thank you all for liking those. And just thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me on this epic journey and this amazing ride. And without further ado, let's get into today's podcast. Now, this one is interesting to me because this one I want to start with something in particular. I want to start with NXT. Now, as you know, I'm not the if you've watched my videos before, I'm not the biggest guy on NXT. I don't do a lot of talking on NXT. I don't discuss all of the matches, nor do I give many predictions. However, last night, NXT Spring Break-In was an interesting event. It did seem as though it did somewhat well. And I'm going to start with the NXT Championship match between Carmelo Hayes and Grayson Waller. Now, Carmelo Hayes did successfully defend his belt against Grayson Waller, and I said it in yesterday's podcast. Personally, I don't think Grayson Waller was the best match to have as your first opponent to defend the title against, as Grayson Waller is someone that you more so want to look at and go, well, what if he does win? But if you're the first opponent to any title defense, it's typically pretty obvious that you're not going to win. At least in my experience of watching professional wrestling. Now, all that being said, Carmelo Hayes did successfully defend his title, and he called out the newly turned heel, Bron Breaker, former NXT champion, former two-time NXT champion to be exact, and Carmelo Hayes pretty much announced the fact that him and Bron Breaker will be having another match when they go one-on-one at NXT Battlegrounds in May 28th, I believe he said, which, man, this is a big month for WWE pay-per-views. We have 3 pay-per-views in 1 month for WWE. We have Backlash in early May, and then in later May, you have Night of Champions and NXT Battlegrounds. That's pretty big. I'm actually kind of impressed with the amount of different pay-per-views they want to do, and with the amount of different match cards that they could get out of this. It's really interesting to have 3 premium live events in one night is huge to me. And I can only imagine what this is going to bring to the table for all of these superstars that are going to be involved. I think this is going to bring so much publicity, and I think this is going to be a big month because obviously the month of May is also where we see Double or Nothing. And so this is a big month for professional wrestling. Now, kind of moving on for a moment, we did see Bron Breakker kind of give in to his heel side again. He attacked Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes from behind, and I just want to say, Bron Breakker, this makes sense for Bron Breakker. He has the strength, he has the power, and he has the capability of that of like no one else. And so for him to step into this ring, and for him to be a heel, and just utilize that dominance the way he does, is amazing to me. Bron Breakker is a guy that when he first broke into NXT and he started as a babyface, he was someone that, kind of proved to people that he could cut a semi-decent promo. He could be a semi-good babyface, and then you see him as a heel, and you see him as this guy who doesn't do too much talking. He talks with his fists, he uses his strength, he's a really good example of what a dominant force of a bad guy should be. He's a good example of what Bronson Reed is kind of doing on Monday Night Raw, for example. What Bobby Lashley did at one point when he was with the Hurt Business. He is just this dominating force. The only difference is Bron Breakker is doing almost no talking. And that's what's making this even bigger for him, is he's stepping into this ring and he is simply being a professional wrestler. Hands down, that's it. And that is one of the best qualities, I think, about this, is he is simply relying on his dominating and sheer strength of force. Now, Bron Breaker, in my personal opinion, obviously, yes, they kind of put him into a little match with Andre Chase last night, which he obviously won. But outside of this thing with Carmelo Hayes and the NXT Championship, I don't see him having anything else to do in NXT. He's already beaten everybody on the roster. He's beaten Apollo Crews. He beat JD McDonough. He beat he's defeated Grayson Waller. He's defeated almost everyone except Carmelo Hayes. If Bron Breakker loses at NXT Battlegrounds, hell, even if he wins, is there even a point in him being in NXT if he's already defeated everybody? I think that Bron Breakker, and this is me speaking personally, I think Bron Breakker is going to get a call up to the main roster. Me personally, I thought he was going to get the call up after his match at Stand and Deliver, but it turns out he might get that call up a little later on. I do think it would make sense for him to get that call up now, in the sense that there's no point in waiting another year. There's no point in waiting much longer. After his match with Carmelo Hayes, if he wins, if he wins, okay, sure, maybe you can keep him in a little bit longer. But if he loses, there's no point in keeping Bron Breakker in NXT. Push him up to the main roster, give him something else, give him something he could do on Raw or something he could do on SmackDown, because I think he's the type of guy at this point, especially with this heel side of him, that could really make, really bring in some business if he went into the main roster. Now, on top of that, going into the women's division, we saw Indy Hartwell successfully defend her women's title. I forget who all she defended against. I believe it was a triple threat match. I believe it was Roxanne Perez and Tiffany Stratton, if I'm not mistaken. And I do just want to say this. I'm very impressed with the way NXT has brought up Tiffany Stratton over the past few months. When I first got into the idea of who Tiffany Stratton was, it was around the time she was having a rivalry with Wendy Chu. And although the wrestling was very good, she reminded me of the type of gimmick and the type of character to not really do too much, at least not for a little while. And she got a major boost pretty quickly, in a pretty short amount of time, in my opinion. And so for her to already have an NXT Women's title match, and for her to already be considered one, in my opinion, is probably one of the upper contenders for this, it's pretty huge. Now, in yesterday's podcast, I did mention a little bit about Cora Jade, and I talked a little bit about where she might go, where she might end up, what she might be doing. Cora Jade did get a match, or did have a match last night, and she did successfully defeat Lyra. I think her name is Lyra Valkyria. She did successfully beat her, and she, in my personal opinion, is going to be the woman that is next up for an NXT Women's title match. In my opinion, she's the one that is next in line to fight Indy Hartwell. Because I think going into NXT Battlegrounds, I think Cora Jade is by far one of the best wrestlers you could put in this match. I'm not even saying have Cora win. I'm simply saying that if you give her this match, it's going to be entertaining. Her matches with Roxanne Perez, entertaining. Her matches, when she would fight Mandy Rose, entertaining. Her tag matches, entertaining. Any match she's in can get extremely, extremely entertaining. And I think, this one would be, no less of that. I think if she fought Indy Hartwell in one-on-one action at NXT Battlegrounds, I think that would be great. And I'm hoping that's what the storyline's leading up to. As I've always been a major Cora Jade fan, and I'm hoping to really see her kind of do more now that she's in the position she's in, because she honestly makes a very good heel. She just needs to kind of tap into it a little bit deeper than she was, because she also made a really good babyface. And so her heel side is conflicting with the babyface side, in the sense that you can tell she's having trouble, at least this is in my opinion, she's having trouble easing into the heel character. And it feels almost a little forced at times. At least this is, coming from me anyways. I could be wrong, but for me sometimes, not always, sometimes it feels really great and it feels like she's 100% heel and like just doing great. And I'm not saying that her being heel isn't like amazing, because it is. Like she puts in some of the best work I've seen, but sometimes you can kind of, in my opinion, you can kind of see that mask breakthrough, that facade breakthrough for a minute, and you can see that she's kind of trying to force it rather than ease into it. At least this is, again, my opinion, so don't get upset at this, please. Now, again, that being said, moving on to the tag division for a minute. Now, I don't know a lot about Gallus. I don't know a lot about Mark Coffey. I don't know a lot about the Schism or anything like that. However, I did see that Joe Gacy and Mark Coffey made a bit of a agreement. I can only imagine that this agreement means that the Schism will get an NXT Tag Team title opportunity against Gallus, which I don't think is a bad idea. I think the Schism is a very underrated faction. Honestly, and I could be wrong, but in my opinion, the Schism is a lot like Sanity. Because we kind of saw it with Chase U and Tyler Bate teaming up. It's exactly like when Ty Dillinger and Roderick Strong and Ruby Soho and Cassius Ohno, where they all teamed up to take on Sanity back in like 2016, 2017. And so, in my opinion, the Schism is a lot like Sanity, just more PG. Because Sanity, not to say Sanity wasn't like PG, they weren't exactly violent, but they were definitely darker than Schism. And I think a lot of people can agree with that. At least, in my opinion, they were a lot darker. Now, in terms of the North American Championship, and in terms of Wes Lee, I don't know a lot about what's going on. I know it sounds like Tyler Bate offered his services to Wes Lee. I'm not sure what's going on there. I also know Ilya Dragunov and Dijak seem to be feuding. Now, I've said this before. Ilya Dragunov, one of my favorite wrestlers down in NXT. If not my favorite male wrestler in NXT right now. And so, him kind of getting to prove himself against a giant like Dijak is very impressive to me. And I like this, so far from what I've seen, I like where this current storyline is going for both of these men, as I think Dijak deserves, this kind of storyline. I feel as though he deserves to be put in this position, and I also feel as though Ilya Dragunov deserves to be put in a big position as well. And so I think both wrestlers could really benefit if, per se, they could go out of this rivalry and go into an NXT title match, or an NXT North American title match, or one of the two. Now, we also have seen, we also saw, I think it was the party or the family, is that what they're calling themselves now? All I know is we saw Tony D'Angelo and his group of people pretty much attack Pretty Deadly, and they put them in the trunk, and then they put them in the river. I don't know what's going on there. Tony D at one point used to be someone that I really enjoyed his character, and I enjoyed his gimmick. Now I'm kind of starting to fall out of love with that. Same thing with this Kiana James and Fallon Henley, is that her name? I don't even know. And Brooke Jensen and Josh, I think his name. I don't know. I don't even know the names at this point. It's so stupid. That storyline is ridiculous to me. I hate that storyline. I don't know what it is, but I can certainly tell you it's no Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis. I can certainly tell you that. But it's a ridiculous storyline in my opinion. I can't get behind that at all whatsoever. I'm gonna move on from NXT. I think we covered most of NXT, at least in my opinion. I covered what was important anyways. I'm going to move on. I want to talk about AEW for a minute, because obviously going into tonight's AEW Dynamite, and like I said earlier, May is right around the corner. We've got Double or Nothing coming up soon, and so I want to look into that, because this is a big night. This match card is pretty big. Orange Cassidy is defending the International Championship. Now, we've seen Orange Cassidy defend the International title against a number and a variety of different wrestlers. Those wrestlers and those superstars, containing names like Kip Sabian, The Butcher, I think he even defended against Jake Hager at one point. He defended against Luchasaurus. He defended against a wide variety of names. And now he's defending against Bandito. Now, as far as I know, Bandito is signed to AEW at this point. I'm not sure. Bandito is one wrestler that if I were to think him versus Orange Cassidy, and this is not a shot on Orange Cassidy, this is simply to say that skills-wise and gimmick-wise, Orange Cassidy is not ready to beat a guy like Bandito. And I say that because Bandito is someone that is so red, fiery hot in the way he wrestles. He's a lot like that of Will Ospreay. And Orange Cassidy failed in beating Will Ospreay. He got very, very close, but he failed. Personally speaking, I think it would make sense for Bandito to win this match. I'm not saying it wouldn't make sense for Cassidy to win, because I could see it going both ways. But when I really, really look at it, I think Bandito makes just a little bit more sense to me. Just a little bit. At least in my opinion. Personally, if I had to be honest with you, I would definitely go with, in terms of predictions, I'm definitely going to go with, Bandito. I don't know, this is a tough one. I'm going to go with Bandito just because I really want Bandito to win. It's not even about, like what I think's going to happen. It's more so, if Tony Khan were to do things right, he'd give it to Bandito. Because, Bandito hasn't done a lot in AEW. He hasn't really gotten too far. Maybe this could be his moment. I don't know. I'm hoping. If my prediction's wrong, my prediction's wrong. But I'm going to say Bandito on that one. Now, we also have Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin for an AEW World Championship contenders match. Now, from what I know, it looks like MJF and Sammy Guevara have made some sort of deal. I'm not 100% certain on this. I haven't caught up fully on AEW Dynamite. I'm still a few weeks behind, so I do apologize for that in advance. However, I do gotta say my money's on Darby Allin. Darby and Sammy's last singles match, Sammy Guevara cheated and he won. I think Darby Allin is going to have something up his sleeve this time around, and I think MJF versus Darby Allin just makes more sense. Personally, I would like to see a fatal four-way between Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, Jungle Boy, and MJF, and maybe we're not counting that out yet. But in case we are, I would love to see Darby Allin versus MJF. I think that makes the most sense, and I think the crowd would really love to see a pay-per-view match, main event, between these two, first off, and second off, for the AEW World Championship. Because I've noticed nobody pushes nobody pushes MJF like Darby Allin does. MJF really shows up and shows out when Darby Allin is wrestling him. I've noticed that. I noticed that at Full Gear of 2021, and I'm assuming that if Darby fights him again, I'm assuming I will notice this. I will notice the same thing in that match, because Darby just seems to drive something out of MJF. And MJF does the same to Darby. But I really notice it coming from MJF. I really notice Darby kind of bringing something out of MJF more than the other way around. So, in terms of predictions, I gotta go with Darby on this one. We also, we hear from Adam Cole. We hear from Adam Cole a little bit, so that's gonna be something. I think, obviously, from what I understand, after what we saw last week, I think Adam Cole's going to have a lot to say to Chris Jericho, to the Chris Jericho Appreciation Society, and I can only imagine what Adam Cole's going to do, to all members of the Jericho Appreciation Society. I can only imagine what he's going to attempt to do to every last one of them. Now we also have Wardlow and Arn Anderson speak. This is interesting. I'm going to be completely honest. I know Wardlow is the TNT champion. I don't know what's going on in terms of Arn Anderson. Again, I have not fully caught up yet. Um, but nonetheless, I would love to see this just because I haven't seen Arn Anderson on AEW in a long time, and I would love to see him be more involved like he once was. I think this is very important to Arn Anderson. I am a big Arn Anderson fan, and I really would love to see him on TV a little more. We also have a major announcement from Tony Khan. Heard that one before. One time, one of his major announcements was the fact that he was making a reality show. One time, one of his major announcements was the fact that they were changing the title of the AEW All Atlantic Championship to the AEW International Championship. So I don't know what exactly it is that's going to be talked about. I don't know exactly what this major announcement is. Maybe it has to do with CM Punk. Maybe it has to do with Forbidden Door. Maybe they're bringing Forbidden Door into this again. Maybe it has to do with a new signing. I don't fully know. But nonetheless, hopefully this is actually a good announcement rather than a bad one. Like, maybe not a bad one, but an anticlimactic one, if you will. Now, we also have Jade Cargill versus Taya Valkyrie now. It is my understanding that this is going to be for the TBS Women's Championship. Jade better lose. I'm sorry, it's Taya Valkyrie. It's Taya freaking Valkyrie. Come on. Jade Cargill has been, 50-0 now? 51-0? I've lost count. She's earned a lot of the matches she's had. And she deserves to have bigger and better matches than what she's been given. And hopefully this match is, it has a good time limit, I'm hoping. Hopefully, it gets the crowd more invested. Hopefully Jade has more time to really, excuse me, to really, to really promote herself more. But it's Taya Valkyrie. I don't know. I don't see this as any other way than this is Taya Valkyrie. And if you give her this belt, if you give her the TBS Women's Championship, I guarantee you, Tony Khan, she will only better your company. I guarantee you. Now, we also have Dax Hardwood versus Jeff Jarrett. Now, this one I'm very interested in. Every singles match I've ever seen of Dax Hardwood has always been an instant classic for me. Claudio Castagnoli versus Dax Hardwood. Bryan Danielson versus Dax Hardwood. Hell, even Dax Hardwood versus Cash Wheeler. All of them have been instant classics. If this happened, in this match, going into this match, Dax Hardwood versus Jeff Jarrett. Personally, I don't see Jarrett winning. I see Dax winning, and I say that because obviously this one-on-one match, this match is to try and get Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett a tag match, right? That's if Jeff can win, and maybe they'll cheat, maybe he will win, but personally, in terms of singles action, Jeff has not really been on par in terms of he has not been winning matches in AEW in singles action. Even in tag team action, he hasn't really been winning. And so, personally, I could very well see Jeff Jarrett facing Dax Hardwood tonight and losing. Because Dax Hardwood, as a singles wrestler, first of all, as a tag team wrestler, him and Cash Wheeler do great work in that ring. But as a singles wrestler, he does even better than anyone could expect. Like, he comes out fire blazing, his feet are on fire the way he runs down in that ring and just goes to work, and he puts on an instant classic. He puts on a clinic, and I love it every single time. So I gotta go with Dax on this one. I'm sorry, I have to. Now, in our main event, or not main event, but for our last match that I'm going to be discussing for AEW, Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita. Now, this is an interesting combination. Obviously, Konosuke Takeshita and Don Callis have kind of been in cohorts a little. They've kind of been working together. Don Callis trying to pick up Konosuke Takeshita for the Elite. They will be taking on the Butcher and the Blade. Obviously, in this match, I'm predicting Kenny and Konosuke. I don't even know if you can call it a prediction rather than a spoiler, yes, to quote Paul Heyman. Because, I mean, it just makes sense. Butcher and the Blade, no offense, great tag team, great wrestlers, but Tony Khan has not utilized them properly. He has not given them a win in how long? At this point, I'd say any match with the Butcher and the Blade, you can obviously expect the other team to win. Alright, so moving on from AEW, I do want to talk a little bit, just for a minute, I want to move on and talk a little bit about Vince McMahon. There's been a lot of talk about who's in charge behind the scenes. Is it Vince McMahon? Is it Triple H? There's been talk about Vince McMahon possibly getting sued. There's been talk about, the allegations against Vince McMahon, a bunch of this, a bunch of that, all this controversy surrounding Vincent Kenny McMahon. And all I can say is that, listen, if he's back, he's back. If he's not running things, he's not running things. If he is running things, he's running things. There's nothing we can do. I can sit here for 5 hours, maybe even more, and I can go on a rant for 5 straight hours about why Vince McMahon running the WWE is the worst thing to ever happen. And I could do the same thing for 5 hours and talk about why Triple H running the WWE is the best thing to happen in the past, 5-10 years. And I say that because we know, I mean, anyone that watches WWE or has watched WWE since SummerSlam of 2022 has seen the major difference, has seen the growth, has seen why WWE is something to watch once more, why AEW finally has competition again, because for a while, AEW wasn't having competition, and maybe that's why Tony Khan got complacent, and why he stopped running a really tight ship and a really good company, I don't know. But with WWE, they are finally starting to kind of get back into the swing of things. We finally saw the World Heavyweight title released. And I'm not saying Vince McMahon isn't in charge, but what I am saying that is I don't see Vince bringing that title back on his own. I see Triple H bringing that title back. I see Vince McMahon making some changes. I do see Vince McMahon kind of going, oh, I don't want this to happen, I want that to happen. He's the boss. He has creative control. He can do what he wants. However, I also see Triple H as someone who's trying his best to make everyone happy, to run a tight ship, to make things go well and smoothly, and, kind of keep up that rhythm and that level of evolution, and keeping WWE on the upper path rather than the lower path. WWE is increasing right now instead of decreasing. They're evolving instead of devolving. And that is the hope. That is what everyone wants to hope right now. And that's my hope. But regardless, I still think WWE has been entertaining these past few weeks. Regardless of if it's Vince McMahon or if it's Triple H, I still think it's been interesting. My hope is that very, very soon Roman Reigns loses the titles and we finally kind of see if Vince is in charge or not. Regardless, I'm hoping we finally kind of start to see WWE really kind of kick into full gear with these championship belts and such. And just kind of start, I don't know how to explain it. Just in terms of championship belts, I really want to see all of them be defended a lot more often. Because for the most part, most of them are being defended, but the Universal Undisputed Championships, they are not being defended. And I'm hoping eventually that changes, because I am getting really sick and tired of Roman Reigns being this part-timing, every 2 months defending, every maybe once a month appearance on SmackDown or Raw or whatever. I'm hoping soon that comes to an end and we finally see Roman Reigns actually do something, or actually have someone that will do something hold those belts instead of Roman Reigns. But regardless, I'm kind of rambling. Back to what I was saying with Vince. At this point, all we can do is hope that it's Triple H, and if it's not, it's not. If it is, it is. But at this point, there's nothing we can do. We're not in charge of WWE. Heck, if we were, a lot of things would be a lot different, I'm sure. But we're not, and so we have to put up with what we have to put up with. But ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. Seriously, it means a lot to me. When I came back, after 2 months, I wasn't expecting many people to catch up on these videos, or really watch them for a while. I was expecting to have to wait another 2 months just to finally get some views and some more people on this journey with me. And so I really appreciate everyone that is in support of this channel. I appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone that's been standing behind me right now with this channel. And thank you very much. And thank you for continuing to be on this journey with me. And I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's episode. Peace out.